For our podcast disclaimer, please visit the episode description. Welcome back to What the Heck is Happening in HR. I'm Kelley Rexroad, and today we're going to talk about a shift that's been happening quietly for years, but is now impossible to ignore. HR is no longer just a support function, and if that statement makes some leaders uncomfortable, that discomfort is part of our story. Because many organizations are still operating with an outdated understanding of what HR actually does and what that role now requires. So let's name it. HR used to be viewed primarily as support. Here, do this. Here, do that. Hire that person. Follow up on this. Support for managers, support for employees, support for operations, and support functions, by definition, are expected to respond. Fix issues that rise, smooth things over, to handle problems once somebody else found out about. Somebody else identified the problem, but we need to fix them. That model no longer fits reality because the risks organizations face today don't wait politely to be addressed after the fact. They show up early, they compound quietly, and by the time they're obvious, the damage is often already done. And that's where HR now sits, at the intersection of people, policy, leadership behavior, and risk. Risk walks on 2 feet. So let's talk about what's changed. First, the visibility of the people decisions has increased dramatically. We've got hiring practices, pay decisions, promotions, terminations, return to work policies, accommodation response. These decisions no longer stay internal. They affect employer brand. They show up online. They influence retention. They shape trust. They're part of the gossip. HR is involved in all of it, not just administratively, but strategically. The legal and regulatory environment has accelerated. We've talked about it in previous episodes. Employment law is no longer slow or centralized. It's layered, it's localized, it's actively enforced. HR is often the first to see where an organization is exposed, not because something's gone wrong yet, but because the pattern is forming. See, that's not support work. That's early warning work. We're the canary that's in the mine. Employee expectations have shifted. Employees expect transparency. They expect consistency. They expect leaders to explain decisions. What's the why? Not just announce them. When those expectations aren't met, employees don't go straight to their managers. They go to HR. They go to each other, and it creates even more drama. But HR becomes the translator between intent and impact, between what leadership meant and how it landed. That translation is strategic, not clerical. Leadership pressure has intensified. Leaders today are managing growth, uncertainty, public scrutiny, and constant change. They're expected to move fast, but hey, avoid missteps. Be decisive, but also inclusive. Be confident, but also empathetic. Hey, these expectations cause conflict, and those expectations are often the conflict. And when they do, HR is pulled in, not just to execute decisions, but to help leaders think them through. That's what good leaders do. That's what good companies do. But here's the part that can create tension. Many leaders still want HR to, quote, support decisions that have already been made. But modern HR work happens before decisions are finalized. It asks questions that slow down. It surfaces risks leaders would rather not confront. It challenges assumptions that feel familiar but no longer hold. That doesn't feel supportive in the moment, but it is protective in the long run. And that's why HR often feels caught. Caught between being invited to the table and expected to quietly agree. Caught between speaking up and being labeled difficult. Caught between protecting the organization and protecting relationships. That tension is real, and it's one of the reasons HR burnout is so high, especially now, especially since COVID. Carrying responsibility without authority is exhausting. So let's be clear. HR is not trying to control the business. HR is trying to prevent avoidable harm. Harm to employees, harm to leaders, harm to culture, harm to reputation, harm to long-term sustainability, harm to finances, and that harm rarely comes from one bad decision. It comes from patterns that go unaddressed, unchecked manager behavior, inconsistent application of policy, silence around emerging risk, decisions made in isolation. HR sees those patterns early, and seeing them early doesn't mean they're always welcomed. Sometimes HR is told, let's not overthink it. Let's deal with it if it becomes a problem. You're being too cautious. This is how we've always done it. And those responses are completely understandable, but they're also expensive because when HR is relegated back to the support role, organizations lose the benefit of oversight. They lose the chance to course correct early. They lose credibility with employees, again, losing trust. They lose trust when issues surface that no one saw coming, even though HR did. So what does it mean to treat HR as more than a support function? It means involving HR earlier, not just at rollout. It means listening when HR raises discomfort, not dismissing it. It means understanding that risk prevention rarely feels urgent until it is. And it also means redefining partnership. True partnership doesn't mean agreement. It means shared responsibility. HR is not there to say no reflexively. It's there to say, hey, let's think this through. And sometimes thinking it through changes the outcome. Other times it simply prepares the organization to handle the impact responsibly. Both matter. And if you're a leader listening to that, here's the reflection. Ask yourself, when HR is usually invited into decisions, is it early, when options still exist, or late, when support is all that's left? That timing matters. And if you're in HR, here's your validation. If the role feels heavier, more complex, and more exposed than it used to be, you're not imagining it. You're no longer just supporting work. You're doing risk translation, culture interpretation, leadership coaching, and organizational foresight. It's real work. It's strategic work at every level, and it deserves recognition, not just reliance. This podcast exists to help us name that shift, to give HR language for the role it's actually playing today, and to help leaders understand why modern HR cannot operate from the sidelines. If this episode resonated with you, whether you work in HR, lead people, or partner closely with HR, don't be on the sidelines. Subscribe to What the Heck is Happening in HR on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or YouTube. This is where we stop treating HR like an afterthought and start recognizing it as a strategic function shaping the future of work.